We've played clips of Al Gore and Ted Turner, Gordon Brown, Tony Blair, Herman von Rompuy. Articles written by Ban Ki-moon, head of the UN, saying global government is being established in 2009 at Copenhagen, total control over the planet. But a few weeks ago, just a few days before ClimateGate broke, the emails proving that the top UN scientists were fudging the numbers, covering up that the temperature has been getting colder for the last 9 years. They know full well carbon dioxide isn't bad. They know full well that humans put off almost none of the carbon dioxide with all of our industry. The numbers are there. It's like 1/2000th of the total carbon dioxide increase they think is from humans, or even less. That's an inflated number. And Kevin Rudd, the Prime Minister of Australia, has been attacking Lord Christopher Monckton. He's been attacking the climate change denialist. We played an IBM TV ad yesterday where they said, if you're not for the climate change tax, you don't want your grandchildren to basically live. You don't care about their future. And so we now have today, administration warns of command and control regulation over emissions. The White House is publicly telling Congress, when Congress is really the boss of the president, they make the laws and he executes, that if you don't put taxes on carbon dioxide and on air travel and cars and everything else, we are going to, quote, take command and control, and it won't be pretty. Those are quotes. Quotes by the administration at Copenhagen to a closed-door meeting with the press. Fox News reports this was a secret meeting they had with them, and it was on condition of anonymity. So they're now issuing this public threat. The EPA on Monday, in line with Copenhagen, announced carbon dioxide that humans exhale 5.5 pounds of a day on average as a toxic waste. It's completely asinine, but it allows them to tax and control everything. It's also confirmed that the full secret text of the treaty has been released, that third world countries will have double the cuts, or right at double the cuts, a little bit less than double the cuts, of the West, and that the IMF and World Bank will run the new planetary government. The UN will have no power. That was always the plan. The United States set up the UN in 45 as a debating society to manipulate and to have one clearinghouse to pay off third world dictators and leaders. It states that the tax money from Westerners will be given to banks to then be loaned to the third world under environmental stipulations. So this is just an expansion of the IMF World Bank raping. So we're going to go over all of that. This is huge, and take some of your phone calls. But I wanted to have Jason Bermas in for a few minutes because he's collating for his incredible film. I mean, it really is a new level in his work and rivaling ours. And Mike Whiteside's back there, the graphics guy who's working slavishly to do a great job with Invisible Empire that's coming out in mid-February of next year. Just hundreds of clips of world leaders calling for world government and new world order and stuff I'd never seen of George Bush Sr. calling for global government. I mean, this is some powerful stuff. But in his research, Bermas got us this clip. Jason, there's two clips. Tell us the clips we're about to see.
Yeah, they just run congruently. Basically, there was a speech November 6th. Kevin Rudd, the Prime Minister of Australia, got up to promote all these emission standards and new taxes under global governance. And basically what he says here is that there's a third argument from those who say that carbon pollution is wrong. And he brings up Christopher Monckton. He says, we are fearmongers. This is not a UN power grab, and we're all world government conspiracy theorists. But then he never says this isn't about world government. He brings up the point that we're not doing anything, Alex. We don't have a solution for this. We are bad. And then, of course, they try to establish the climate change denial movement and associate us with Holocaust denial.
So right here is the treaty. They call for world government over and over again. We have all the world leaders saying it's the birth of world government, run by a private banking group. So here he is kind of going with the old propaganda of, well, you're a bunch of conspiracy theorists when we're only reading what it actually says. This shows Kevin Rudd's disdain for the Australian people. This shows that he thinks they're a bunch of idiots. But a week later, ClimateGate documents broke, and now is he eating crow? His parliament is on the verge of collapse. There's been all these resignations. The anti-carbon tax crowd has now gotten the second place in their parliamentary system, so they're in a lot of trouble. And last week they failed to pass their carbon tax, but Rudd is saying, I don't care. I'm going to use the Australian version of the EPA to do it anyways. So prime ministers and presidents are now openly acting as dictators under orders of the world government.
Absolutely. The ETS, the emissions trading standard, failed there last week, and that was a huge victory yet again for the truth. You know, we are trying to bring people to realize that this document that sits right next to you mentions global government over 24 times. It is their third pillar. Taxation is mentioned over 12 times, Alex. We know what this is about.
Well, we now know it's a 2% tax on all GDP off the top. It is a 2% tax on all currency transfers and stock brokering. It is a giant ramped up 20% tax on all fossil fuels. It is road taxes with license plate reading cameras. It's 700 new UN bureaucracies. I mean, this is a total takeover, and it's paid to the IMF and World Bank. And the London Guardian reports where the money goes will be secret. We've already seen this with the trillions given to the private Federal Reserve, and they tell Congress, we're not going to tell you where the money went, even though they told Congress it was to unfreeze the mortgages. I mean, this is like Madoff, who actually came up with a lot of this, and Ken Lay. You know, they're now both in prison or dead. It's the same crew. Might as well just say, we're God, slit your wrist, and put the blood directly into our mouths. I mean, this is just them openly saying, we rule the planet, we are the con artists, we are the criminals.
And let's not forget the false left cover of, oh, the oil industries are backing all this research that disproves climate change. Alex, we have the articles where the head of Exxon, the head of Shell Oil are calling for a carbon tax. And if you go to the smallest...
The head of BP.
Absolutely.
And now we have the internal emails from 2000 where they were... The Climate Center was taking orders from the oil companies and saying it's only part of their agenda to take over. Mm-hmm. The oil companies did. It's just like the insurance companies openly wrote the health care bill that now makes you go get insurance with them. Mm-hmm. And then they're cutting Medicare and Medicaid. The case for killing Granny. Let's play this first clip. This is a 2.5-minute clip with the Prime Minister of Australia. Here it is.
Support to help meet the expected overall increase in the cost of living flowing from the scheme. A third argument from those who quibble about the design of the carbon pollution reduction scheme is that the international design aspects of the scheme are flawed. Lord Christopher Monckton, a former advisor to Margaret Thatcher, was quoted this week in the Australian press by Janet Albrechtsen. Lord Monckton describes the potential Copenhagen Agreement as a plan to set up transnational government on a scale the world has never seen before. Enter the world government conspiracy theorists. Lord Monckton also publicly warned Americans that, and I quote him, "In the next few weeks, unless you stop it, your president will sign your freedom, your democracy and your prosperity away forever," unquote. Janet Albrechtsen, in her understated neoconservative way, refers to the potential Copenhagen Agreement as a UN power grab. This gaggle of world government conspiracy theorists are so far out there on the far right that they rub up next to the global anarchists on the far left. Those who argue that any multilateral action is by definition evil. Those who argue that climate change does not represent a global market failure. Those who argue that somehow the market will magically solve the problem in a way in which it hasn't solved the problem so far. And that uncoordinated national actions will somehow fix the problem without answering the basic logical question of how can we deal with an existential threat, an existential challenge for the whole planet in the long term, one which lies beyond the capacity of any individual national action to address. The climate change deniers now form the comfortable bedfellows of the global conspiracy theorists, in total bald-faced denial of global scientific, economic and environmental reality. These arguments, thinly veiled attempts to create a new climate change global conspiracy theory, are now being used in Australia. Like the arguments from climate change deniers, these arguments have zero basis in the evidence.
So that's clip number one, but we have Herman von Rompuy and everybody else saying this is global government, and then he's calling us conspiracy theorists for saying it.
And then talking tongue-in-cheek, let me just read a quote from that. Without answering the basic logical question of how can we deal with the existential challenge for the whole planet, which lies beyond the capacity of any individual national action to address? Right there, he acknowledges, yes, we are setting up a world government, but we're global government conspiracy theorists, Alex, and we're in bed with climate change denial now. It's all semantics. It's all word games. The guy admits it to you as he denounces it. That's their game.
Let's play Von Rompuy. Here it is.
2009 is also the first year of global governance, with the establishment of the G20 in the middle of the financial crisis. The climate conference in Copenhagen is another step towards the global management of our planet. Our mission, our presidency, is one of hope.
Now, we could play Al Gore saying it, too. We could read out of the treaty. We have the London Guardian saying it's world government, but that it's a good thing. And we have them saying the IMF and World Bank will be the world government.